Welcome to the Rotowire DFS podcast brought to you by FanDuel.com, the leader in one-day fantasy sports. I'm your host, Josh Hayes, joined as always by Benny Ricciardi as we break down the Saturday NBA DFS slate. You can always find Benny on Twitter at BennyR11 and over at RotoCurve, Rotowire, and as the featured writer in the DraftKings playbook. And you can also follow me on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. The Rotowire DFS podcast is available on iTunes and Stitcher, so if you get a chance to rate, review us, please go ahead and don't forget to share and subscribe. And for those of you tuning in live streaming with us and checking us out on the official Rotowire YouTube channel, we definitely appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that red subscribe button so you'll be the first to know whenever we post a new show here for y'all. Benny, welcome to another Saturday in the NBA.
Yeah, it's been a pretty solid week so far. So hopefully we can we can keep it rolling. I think we have a 9-game slate, if I'm not mistaken, 8-game slate. Not a lot of games that are looking like they're going to have huge totals. The Miami-Boston game probably won't. The Brooklyn-Utah game probably won't. Memphis-Phoenix, I don't know, maybe. I think the game everyone's going to be targeting here is definitely going to be that Golden State Warrior OKC game. The Spurs are playing Houston. That kind of, hurts a lot of the Houston exposure. Portland, Chicago. I mean, there's not a lot of games here that are looking to me like we're going to see a bunch of 220 totals or anything like that on Saturday. I think there's going to be a couple games that could turn into blowouts, some big spreads. So it's going to be a tricky slate on Saturday.
Yeah, I totally agree there with you. Now, the weird thing about this here is that actually, despite the fact that you have like an 8-game slate, I think we get into a couple of different spots where like, wow, I really don't like what's available. And then some other spots where you're like, well, geez, you've got a plethora of options to choose from. And I think at the point guard position with 8 games, I could actually almost make a case for 10 different guys here, depending on which way you want to go. So let's go ahead and just kick it off like we normally do. Obviously, Golden State versus the Oklahoma City is the game to feature, and I have no problems with anybody who wants to sort of try to come up with a full stack for GPPs. But let's go ahead and talk about what makes the most sense at the point guard position.
Well, these two teams actually played about a week or so ago, and you got 51 fantasy points out of both Russell Westbrook and Steph Curry. Now, that sounds like a lot, but both guys are like a tinge below 11K at this point. I think Steph is 10-8 the other night, and I think Westbrook was 10-9. Both of them had pretty good games, so we might see both of these guys at 11K in this matchup. I don't see a lot of upside there. Definitely for a cash game, if you're looking for a safe 50 points, I think you get that out of both of these guys. But at 11K, if you're looking for 5X as a floor, I think both of them are like basically going to have to play really good games just to hit their floor. I don't see a lot of upside out of either one of them in this one. Probably would go Westbrook over Curry, especially on FanDuel because you don't get the 3-point bonus over there. So I think the fact that Westbrook could get you, probably some more rebounds. He's actually been getting more assists than Curry lately as well. And they both can score just insane amount of points. So I think I'd rather go Westbrook over Curry if I had to choose. But to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not really loving either one of them.
Yeah. You know what? I think Steph Curry has basically re-entered that spot that we used to be in with Kevin Durant out of the lineup, which is can't fade territory. Right now, Steph Curry is insane right now. And they're coming up with big game after big game on the road. And I actually wrote this up on Rotowire.com for my handicapping the NBA piece that posted yesterday to the site. And I said that, Steph Curry's points per game average actually goes up by 5 points on the road, believe it or not, versus at home. And that makes some sense too, because it's not because they play worse at home. It's because actually they play better, and he probably gets rested in more fourth quarters at home. So, they're in closer games. You could see that they were challenged against Atlanta. Orlando didn't go away at all until the very end when Steph Curry started, lighting the gym on fire in the fourth quarter. And so they need him to play big minutes. And so this is where you sort of, create the X factor and take a look at it and say, hey, this is a different situation. Whereas, Russell Westbrook was the triple double monster and the cheaper option that we generally preferred. I am probably going to try to create as many lines as possible that have both. And I think what you can do here, especially, you know, on FanDuel is, all right, say, hey, I got 2 anchors. Usually sometimes we start with something like a point guard and a power forward or something else like that, but I have no problem at all, especially with Russell Westbrook and the insane pace. I mean, I think we're going to start the conversation at 230 on the total, and then decide how much farther up we're going to go for there. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I would think that. I mean, both of these teams play fast. Both of them score a lot of points. So, you know, you expect, like I said, I don't expect a lot of these games to have totals that big. So this one is probably going to dwarf the rest of the games by, you know, a good 15 to 20 points. So I think you're going to need some exposure to it. And obviously, if you want some exposure, you know, these are 2 of the higher scoring guys that come out of this game. So, you know, it's going to be tough to get to the top without having either one of them.
I totally agree with you there as well. So the way I think I'm going to approach this here is, you know, definitely locking in one. If I have to choose one of the 2, I'm going with Curry. Going to try to go with both. But we have some other guards that are in some pretty good positions. We've got Mike Conley up on the road against Phoenix. We've got Shelvin Mack against Brooklyn, who sort of emptied the clip now that there's no Joe Johnson there. Let's go ahead and talk about what you want to do below that for value in terms of, you know, pairing up and cash and GPPs.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head with 2 of the guys that I have pretty high up on my list. You know, Conley's been giving us some big 6x games lately. We know Phoenix likes to play fast. We know that they're not a very good defensive team. Again, without Gasol in there, with all the injuries that they have on Memphis and the guys that they traded away and, you know, the pieces they're trying to get in there, Conley's probably the most consistent. And I really like his price point. You know, at 6,700, he's so much cheaper. I mean, you're basically getting him at like a 40 to 50% discount to guys like, you know, Westbrook and Curry. And I'm expecting like 50, 55 points out of Westbrook and Curry. I expect Conley to get me over 30. So if he gets me over 30 on a value scale, you know, points per dollar, he's probably a better bet than guys like Westbrook and Curry. Also, Shelvin Mack. I mean, Shelvin Mack and Donald Sloan are the 2 cheap guys that I'm looking at here. You know, Sloan has been putting up 30 fantasy points in the last couple games, and he's doing so at basically minimum price. Mac's been playing some more minutes, giving you like 25 to 30, also at a lower price. I think Mac's going to be higher owned than Donald Sloan is, so I actually like Sloan a little more as my cheap option. But again, I like Shelvin Mack as well. So guys like Connolly, Shelvin Mack, and Donald Sloan, I think are going to be guys that I'm looking at. And I really like Sloan and Mack and think they're going to be highly owned, because if you want to fit in the Westbrooks and Currys and a couple of the other big players at some of the other positions, you know, you're going to need one of those like min-price salary savers. So I think those 2 guys fit the bill the best. And like I said, I think I like Sloan a little more than Mack because I think his ownership will be lower. And he's actually been putting up more fantasy points lately.
All right, so you tell me we need to take it nice and slow here on Saturday slate?
Nice and Sloan if you want to be the Mac Daddy. I think so.
Oh, there you go. There you go. See, now it only took, how long have we been doing these shows together? I don't know, since June of last year for you to finally tag team with me. Usually you just give me that like this dude. I would slap him virtually right now if I could. And I was like, come on, man. I'm just trying to have a little fun here. And you're just like,
really? You know, I try to stick to the facts. That's my that's what I bring to the table here.
Just the facts, you know? Man. Just the facts.
Yeah. What's that line from Major League? He's not the best color man in the business for nothing, or something like that.
Yeah, I forget what he even said. He was like, it was like a one-word answer. He's like, nope. He's like, he's not the best colored man in the business for nothing, folks. All right, let's go ahead and move forward here to the shooting guard position and talk about what you want to do. Here are some big boys up top, and then you know, the problem I have here is I think there's a pretty quick cliff. There's some value, but it's sketch value overall down below. That's similar construction, but I think we're going to have to figure out where in the middle, you know, part of the hood you want to live at the shooting guard position, because Harden's in a bad spot, and let's assume that we paid up. Even if you use one guy at the point guard position, you're pretty expensive as it is at the 2. So what do you do here?
Yeah, well, before we even get into who we are going to play, let's talk about the James Harden situation so everybody understands.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay me enough money. You couldn't give me enough money to build lineups with James Harden in it. against the San Antonio Spurs. And let me explain why. He's had 2 games against San Antonio this year. He scored 21 and 23 fantasy points. Not real life points as a 40 fantasy point game. His overall fantasy scores on both of those games were 21 and 23. And the reason for that is San Antonio concentrates on making him give up the ball early. So they don't let him get the ball in positions where he can go to the basket. They basically almost double him when he comes over half court and force the other guys to beat him, which is why they've been beating up on Houston, because the other guys really haven't been able to, do much against them. So when you're looking at Houston going up against San Antonio, I mean, even to go back to the point guard spot, we've been talking about guys like Beverly a lot, a guy like Ariza, who's their small forward. The other guys on Houston usually have bigger games against San Antonio because they make a concerted effort to not let James Harden beat them. So when you're looking at the shooting guard spot here, there is absolutely no way I would recommend anybody even attempting to pay up for James Harden when they go up against the San Antonio Spurs. So that gets us back to the question that you asked, because I agree completely. Without Harden, it drops off pretty quick down there. I mean, you look at some of the other names up at the top, CJ McCollum against Chicago, if Jimmy Butler's out, you got to think it's a little bit of a better spot for him, and he's been scoring. So maybe he's there, but I don't really love him. Dwayne Wade against Boston. Boston's usually pretty good at stopping guards, even though Wade's been playing pretty well and is, decently priced. So part of me wants to look at Wade, but the matchup's not really all that great for him. Really up top, like when you're looking around at all those guys, I mean, do you want to take Klay Thompson against OKC when you know that, there's a chance he's probably going to be guarding Westbrook for points of that game? Do you want to take Chris Middleton against Detroit, who's usually a slower paced kind of team? Andrew Wiggins against New Orleans, when basically all Wiggins has been doing this year is scoring actual points, doesn't give you much in the way of like the rebounds and the assists. So I agree with you. Up at the top, there's really not a lot that I'm, falling in love with. I do like KCP a little bit. I would be willing to come down to guys like him. I think I'm going to be willing, hopefully, if Derrick Rose is out again, I think Etuan Moore is pretty cheap. He's somebody that I'm looking at. Even Markel Brown for the, Brooklyn Nets, now that they got rid of Joe Johnson, he's going to see a few more minutes. But, I mean, none of this stuff is stuff that I really love. So, for me, I think that the shooting guard spot is a position I'm going to try to save some money at, because I just don't see myself wanting to spend up for some of these guys up towards the top end. I think it'll be one of those positions where when you're building your roster, you throw in like an Etuan Moore and maybe like a Markel Brown to start with, and then you build the rest of the roster out. And if it turns out you have some money left over, then I'd go back there and upgrade to, whoever I can upgrade to with whatever money I have left over. But if I go like cheap and punt the position at all on Saturday, I mean, I would be perfectly fine punting the shooting guard position and then spending up for the studs at every other position that we have.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there as well. So the way I think I'm going to be approaching this for the time being is I want exposure to Etuan Moore. He had that one. I need to remind myself not to fall off on Etuan Moore because the price is still in the mid 4K range. And I played in one game against Cleveland against J.R. Smith defense and regretted it. And then ever since then, he's been producing, 6.6x, 7.7, and then 5.3, a quiet game, which has still got you value against the Washington Wizards. So another good spot for Etuan Moore once again against Portland, who's in the bottom 11, bottom 12 in DVP. And you know that Portland has been always playing at a pretty strong place. Plus, Etuan Moore is at home, and Chicago looks like they're trying to play some pretty good team ball overall. And Etuan Moore's getting the minutes there as well. 29, 41, 34, then the hiccup against Cleveland, and then 29, 31, and 37. So he's probably averaging right around 33-ish minutes a game, just sort of eyeballing that there. And then on this other side of that too, I think what you want to take a look to is you mentioned Markel Brown. Let's go ahead and attack that with Rodney Hood once again. And, Rodney Hood, the prices slowly continue to creep up. He went up to 6,100 against the San Antonio Spurs. But you know what? I don't care about that game. He scored 23 fantasy points. It was less than 4X. Nobody cares. That game, was like in the 160s. And, it's the San Antonio Spurs. You take a look at what he did against Houston, 6.4X. there as well. And, games like Dallas and Phoenix was at 5.7 and 7.3. And so we're talking about definitely weaker opponents. And this is probably the weakest opponent he's faced in about 2 weeks in the Brooklyn Nets. So some people may be a little bit off of him because the production just started to creep down a little bit after the price raised above 6K. Everybody was liking it a lot better when he was in the 5,600 range. But now's the time to jump back in, especially following another quiet performance against San Antonio Spurs. So all good in Rodney Hood for me on Saturday. Before we move on to the small forward position, I want to let all you beloved pod listeners know, if you're not subscribing to rotowire.com, now is the time to do so. We have a lot of great information coming up to the site. A lot of people are getting prepared for baseball season. We got you covered here with awesome premium content. We've got lineup optimizers for all the major sports, MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, college football, soccer, and golf. Up to the minute depth charts, customizable league projections, and complete draft kits for all the major sports. So make sure you check out rotowire.com/pod, free 10-day trial. You get it checked out. You get access to all the information that we use for each and every show here on this podcast. Rotowire.com/pod. Tell them Josh and Benny sent you. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what you're putting down at small forward position on Saturday. Are you back?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I got booted off there for a second.
All right. Well, thanks for the awkward silence. That was pretty awesome. I'm just going to jump right back into it. Since you did your David Copperfield and Magic Disappearing Act, this is actually where I said, hey, who do you want to play at small forward? And then stood there like waiting. And I was like, oh, hey, wait a minute. What do I do? Okay. So perfect timing for you to talk about who you want to play at the 3.
Yeah, I think there's actually a couple options that I'm looking at. I'm not going up for the high end. Kawhi Leonard is back right now and playing a bunch of minutes, but he doesn't really usually put up big scores against Houston. I think he's more concentrated when they play Houston on, his job of stopping James Harden. And it seems like the rest of his team is usually the ones who pick up the slack in that situation. I do like Giannis. He's been putting up some big numbers lately. Like 35, 36, 38. I think he had like 70 the second to last game, came back with 40 last night. My only problem there is his price is starting to come up. So he's like an 8K player right now. So if he does get you that 40 fantasy points, it's still only like a 5X floor on him. Guys, I think he's safe for cash, but if you're looking for upside for a tournament, I'd rather go down to like a Tobias Harris, who is still below 6K, has been putting up 30 fantasy points for us. A guy like Matt Barnes, who's like 5K going up against a high-paced Phoenix team, especially if Tony Allen is still out. He's been seeing a ton of minutes. I think he had like 38 fantasy points last game. So that was a huge like 7X return. He's somebody that I like and will be rolling out there a little bit. Luol Deng going up against Boston. We usually like to stay away from the backcourt players that are going up against Boston, but the front court players usually do pretty well. And I mean, Deng has been putting up some great numbers, even with Wade back. I mean, he had those 2 huge games when Wade was out, but even with Wade back in the last 2 games, he's gone like 5.7 and 6.7X. So I think he's in play. And then a guy who I think we have to have exposure to, Bojan Bogdanovic had a pretty good game last night. Is min priced dirt cheap. And now that they got rid of Joe Johnson, you're going to be seeing a lot of minutes out of Bojan. So I don't really love him. He's not a guy that I feel good about. I don't love the matchup against Utah for him, but at minimum price, I think he's going to get us 20 to 25 fantasy points, which, is going to be enough of a return and, allow us to have some money to save. Like if you're looking to put Steph Curry and Westbrook in the same roster, I think you can do so because there's not a lot at shooting guard. You can afford to go down at shooting guard. And I think you can afford to throw a guy like Bojan in with, one of these guys that I mentioned that are in like the 5 or 6K range and not pay up. And after that, I think you'll be like right on par where you can still go get some decent players at the power forward and center spot. So if you're looking to put a lineup together that has Westbrook and Steph Curry, I think Bojan's going to be one of those guys that, you're going to have in that roster.
Yeah, I love the call there. Just for the record, I believe he likes to be called Bojan. So that's I was calling him Boj like Bojo the Clown for like so long overall. So don't feel bad or anything like that. It just, it finally ended up learning that myself as a lesson. Down in that value area as well. I mean, if obviously we want to make some room for Durant, if at all possible, in this spot, just because the total is going to be crazy, and I love the call of Kawhi Leonard as well. Tobias Harris for mid value, sign me up, please. And I also think you can take a shot at GPPs with Matt Barnes, who after having just like a rough little stretch in the middle of February, came out with one of his best games of the season, almost 40 fantasy points, good for 8.4x against LA. It's another super weak matchup against the Phoenix Suns. I knew it was a P team. Philadelphia. Keep saying it. Phoenix Suns for Matt Barnes. And Matt Barnes is, in that super cheap territory, still under 5K on FanDuel as of the last game. 4,700 was the price tag. The last guy I want to mention, I don't know if I mentioned him before or if on yesterday's show or previously, but Dougie McBuckets has been making some hay here, coming off the bench, but still playing about 28 to 30 minutes, has paid off 10x with a big 36-point game against a very tough Toronto defense who, regardless of who's been playing the three, have defended that position quite well, I think, in the top 5 on the season. And, and then he went for 22 points and 2 dunks against the Washington Wizards once again. So and under 4K. So very safe play. You don't need a ton of, points to make value. Once you get into, I think right now what you need is about like 18 or 19 fantasy points, which is super doable. And they're playing great team ball overall. So I like for value at home against a Portland team that has plays at a pretty solid pace to make a case for Dougie McBuckets at the small forward position in GPPs. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the 4 and talk about what you want to do here for Saturday.
Yeah, there's excuse me, there's quite a few guys that I have on my list here. I like LaMarcus Aldridge going up against Houston. Houston has been a team that struggled to stop power forwards all year. Aldridge had 2 good games against them already. I think he had like 44 and 37 fantasy points. So for his price at around $7,000, he's been giving you 5 or 6x in those matchups with Houston. So I like Aldridge up top. I also like Favors. Favors has been playing very well. Going up against Brooklyn, I don't think it's an incredibly tough matchup for him with Thad Young. He's been giving you 5, 6x value at his price. I don't think his price has really came back up to the full level where it was before his injury. So I still think you're getting a little bit of a discount on him. Zach Randolph against Phoenix without Marc Gasol, I think, is a guy in play. But the 2 guys who I actually like a lot and I think give you the most upside for a tournament, Jabari Parker has been playing great lately. And the thing that I like about him on FanDuel is his price hasn't moved. It stayed in that like 55, 5,600 range. So he's like $1,000 cheaper than Zach Randolph, $1,500, $1,800 cheaper than guys like Favors and Aldridge. So for that kind of a discount, if you're going to be getting 30, 35 fantasy points out of this guy, for 5,500, I think his floor is incredibly safe at like 26 points. And I think he can give you upside into the mid 30s. So I really like Parker. And then the guy who I was all over last night that went off for us, Mirza Teletovic is 4,200 on FanDuel last night, put up 40 fantasy points. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of his last 8 games. He's gone at least 5x or better. So if he stays down in that 4K range right there, again, he's another one of those guys that's almost a must start for me. If you're trying to fit in, a Westbrook and Curry lineup, I think you almost have to have some exposure to Mirza, and I think he's going to be very highly owned come Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. What I always like to say, Mirza was the case that they gave me, so that's going to be an excellent call overall at the power forward position. I'm in on Favors, but you know what? If you take a look at what you wanted to do dollar for dollar, Derek Favors and Gorgie Jang are sort of giving you like similar production. The only thing I sort of have to worry about just a little bit is if I want to go up against Anthony Davis defense or not. The information says that it's essentially a neutral matchup in terms of DVP. So if you're looking for about similar production for 30 plus fantasy points, approaching 40 at I think what looks like a $1,200 discount. I would prefer just going down to Jang versus Derek Favors, who's in a monster spot, by the way, against Brooklyn. But, just with the pace that the Utah plays, it's a lot tough for him to get into the 40 range in terms of fantasy points on FanDuel. So I love the call for the Jabari Parker. I'm definitely all in, and Mirza is definitely the case that they gave me on Saturday as well. So he's been bombing away, and I believe Zach Lowe was on one of his shows talking about how his defense has improved, and so hopefully that means more minutes for him, because he did some serious damage and kept Phoenix in that game and helped us, make some serious hay in some of our GPPs as well. So I love the call. I'll be definitely invested again on Saturday. Before we move on to the power forward position, I have to let everybody know out there, if you're looking for a business website for your business, why not do it yourself here with Wix.com? No matter what business you're in, Wix.com has something for you. Used by more than 75 million people worldwide, Wix makes it easy to get your website live today. You need to get the word out about your business. It all starts with a stunning website. So with hundreds of designer-made, customizable templates to choose from, the drag and drop editor, there's no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or designer to create something beautiful. You can do it yourself with Wix.com. Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites each and every day. So when you're running your own business, you're bound to be too busy to worry about the budget, the scheduling appointments, or building a website for a business. And because you're too busy, it has to be easy, and that's where Wix.com comes in. With Wix.com, it's easy and free. Go to Wix.com to create your own website today. The results will be stunning. All right, let's go ahead and talk about your top options here on Saturday at the center position.
Yeah, I think the guy that I have right now is my number one, because you can only roll one out on FanDuel anyway, is going to be Hassan Whiteside going up against the Boston Celtics. Over the last couple games without Bosch, he's been putting up, 20-something points, which has always been my drawback with Whiteside, is he hasn't been scoring all that much. But now with Bosch out of the lineup, they're asking him to do more on the scoring side. And he's a guy that can get you easily, 15, 18 rebounds. And that's not like, hyperbole. Like in his last 3 games, I think he's done, 23 rebounds, 18 rebounds, 13 rebounds in his last 3 games, and 25, 19, and 21 points. Now, he doesn't do much else besides that. He does have some games where he gets you a lot of blocks, 2, 6, and 2 blocks in the last couple games. But I could definitely see a, 20 point, 15 rebound, 2 or 3 block performance coming here against Boston. And we know all season long, what's the way we've been attacking Boston? We've been looking at, big guys in the front court to go up against Boston, because that's where they've really struggled the most. So if you're going to be able to get a guy like Whiteside at, $8,000, which is a discount to some of the other big players you have at the center position. Like, I don't hate Pau Gasol, but I don't know if I want to spend an extra $1,000 to get a Pau Gasol or an Andre Drummond or a Karl Anthony Towns, when I can save $1,000 and put Whiteside in there, who's given me 7.5, 6.7, and 5x, 40, 53, and 55 fantasy points in his last 3 games. If I'm going to get him at, 8,200, I think he's pretty safe for a, 40 to 50 point fantasy outcome here, which would make him a, 5 to 6x kind of guy for me. So Whiteside is probably tops on my list, but I think I'm going to be looking to spend up. So guys like Pau, Andre Drummond, and Karl Anthony Towns are some other guys that I would look at. But I really think Whiteside is going to be the guy that I wind up going with.
I like the call overall. I think Pau Gasol is a super safe guy. At $9K is the price tag, and he's been a pretty much a double-double monster with double-doubles here in 4 of the past 6 games. And he almost triple-doubled in the 2 of the past 3 games with 9 assists against Washington and Toronto. And then the one game where he only had 5 assists, he had 5 blocks. So he's been producing at a pretty high level. It hasn't been much above 5x because the price is so expensive. But there's the production level is certainly going to be there, and he's playing at home. I also like Karl Anthony Towns. Once again, I know the price has gotten to sort of like, whoa, hey, is he going to still be able to continue to pay off this price tag? Because once you get above the 9K range, they're counting on you to not just be a double-double, but be an effective double-double with they want the dessert and the cherry on top. So but if you take a look at what the situation is here, it's the single best matchup you can come up with on the board, aside from the Philadelphia 76ers. New Orleans Pelicans, second to last in terms of DVP. Omer Sheik has nothing for Karl Anthony Towns. If they're smart, they'll switch Anthony Davis onto Karl Anthony Towns and then sort of try to pick their poison with Gorgie Jang, who probably would be an even smarter option in that respect. But Karl Anthony Towns against New Orleans, if you have enough salary, I think you should, just give it strong consideration. Having said that, if you're choosing just the one center, like you said, between Whiteside and the Towns, I'm taking the discount against with Whiteside against Boston, who also is in the bottom 5 in terms of DVP. Gerald Solinger, like I've always said, has a better chance of eating all the donuts in the break room than he does of actually, defending the paint for the Boston Celtics. He's never been a good defender ever in his league. It's the one weak spot that Boston hasn't been able to correct, and they sort of just have to live with it because he's a above average offensive player and basically the best candidate they have to hold down that position. So
yeah. And he's a little undersized as well, which is why I really like Whiteside, because one of the ways that Whiteside gets a lot of his fantasy points is racking up the rebounds. So against an undersized guy who you should be able to rack up a lot of rebounds against, I think he's got the best chance of all these expensive options to give us upside. Like, I agree with you. I like Karl Anthony Towns a lot. I like Pau Gasol a lot. But I don't think that at the price those guys are at, almost $1,000 more than Whiteside, that there's a lot of upside by using them. For a cash game, I think they're both pretty safe. But if you're looking for upside in the tournament, I think Whiteside's got to be the guy you go with.
All right. I'm with you there as well. And then for value below that, I think the only two guys I really want to make a case for here, or the only guy I'm really feel comfortable down at the bottom, is Tyson Chandler against Memphis. He plays 33 minutes, doubles, and is under 5K, 4,500. The price has actually dropped from 4,800. It hit 4,800 twice in the past month and a half overall. So, and that they're going to sort of need him to be on the floor against Memphis, who likes to play a little bit bigger with some of their guys. He'll probably be the primary matchup against Zach Randolph. So I'm okay with that, at least for GPPs. Anybody else that you want to mention before we head on out of here?
Yeah, I'm not really enamored by anybody in the cheap levels. So for me, I think, like I said, I know I keep beating a dead horse here, but Whiteside to me is the play. And I'm going to have him in cash and GPP tournaments and, probably just plug him in the lineup and work the rest of the lineup around it.
All right, fair enough. And so that's going to wrap it up for the Rotowire DFS podcast for Saturday and for this week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, you can also subscribe to this show on the official Rotowire YouTube channel there. We've picked up subscribers, I think, each and every day this week. Definitely appreciate all the people thumbing it up, giving us a thumbs up and subscribing. You can check us out on iTunes and Stitcher. It's at BennyR11 and at Josh Hayes FS to follow us and send us all any tweets that you would like to on Twitter. And it's at Rotowire for all your season-long and DFS needs. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.